desperate army, trapped in the heart of an empire, a ruthless king eager to crush them, and one man, forced to rise from the shadows and lead his comrades through hell itself. This is the unbelievable true story of Xenophon and the 10,000, an odyssey of war, betrayal, and survival so incredible that it feels more like legend than history. It all began with a man's ambition. Cyrus the Younger, a Persian prince, craved the throne of his brother, King Artaxerxes II. But to seize power, he needed an army, not just any army, but the finest warriors in the world. He turned to the Greeks. Fresh from decades of fighting each other in the Peloponnesian War, Greek soldiers were hardened, disciplined, and, most importantly, eager for gold. Cyrus promised them riches beyond their wildest dreams if they joined his campaign. So 10,000 of them did. What they didn't know was that they were marching toward disaster. Among them was an Athenian named Xenophon, a man who would soon become their most important leader. A student of Socrates, Xenophon wasn't a general or a king. He was just a philosopher, one who had ignored his mentor's warnings about the dangers of foreign wars. He had joined the expedition for adventure and fortune, but fate had other plans for him. First, everything seemed to go well. Cyrus led his army deep into Persia, encountering little resistance. He convinced his Greek mercenaries that they were simply suppressing rebels within the empire. But as they crossed the Euphrates, the truth became clear. They weren't just fighting rebels. They were marching to war against the King of Kings himself. Then came the fateful day, the Battle of Cunaxa. The Greek hoplites, trained to perfection, clashed with the mighty Persian army. Against all odds, they triumphed. The 10,000 crushed everything in their path, proving once again that Greek discipline was unmatched. But victory was an illusion. Amid the chaos, Cyrus charged headfirst into battle, desperate to kill his brother with his own hands. And in that reckless moment, an enemy soldier cut him down. The rebellion was over. The Greeks had won the battle but lost everything else. Leaderless, stranded 1,000 miles from home, and surrounded by an empire thirsting for revenge, they were living dead men. Artaxerxes knew it. His general, Tissaphernes, pretended to offer peace, inviting the Greek commanders to negotiations. But it was a trap. The leaders were captured, then executed. The 10,000 were now alone. This should have been the end. But then, from the ranks of ordinary soldiers, a new leader emerged, Xenophon. He had no formal command, no title, just a sharp mind, a strong will, and the ability to inspire men on the brink of despair. He stood before the army and gave them a choice: surrender and die or fight their way home. The decision was made. They would march. And so began one of the greatest escapes in history. Through scorching deserts, over frozen mountains, past enemy ambushes, and through endless miles of hostile lands, Xenophon led the 10,000 north toward the Black Sea, their only hope of survival. The journey was a nightmare. At every turn, Persian forces harassed them. Barbarian tribes ambushed them in narrow mountain passes. Supplies ran out, men starved, and frostbite claimed those who couldn't keep up. But under Xenophon's leadership, the Greeks never broke. They fought as one, moving with the discipline of a single living creature, cutting down anything in their way. Then, one day, after months of suffering, it happened. From atop a hill, the exhausted men saw it, the vast, endless expanse of the sea, the only path home. A cry erupted, "The Lada! The Lada! The sea! The sea!" Tears filled their eyes. They had done the impossible, but their story didn't end there. Even as they reached Greek lands, the army found itself caught in new conflicts, drawn into the struggles of Thrace and Sparta. Some stayed to fight, others finally returned home. And Xenophon? He had changed. No longer just a philosopher, he had become a warrior, a survivor, and ultimately the storyteller who would immortalize their journey. Yet his trials were far from over. Upon returning to Greece, Xenophon discovered he was in exile. Athens, his homeland, condemned him for siding with the Spartans, bitter enemies of his city. The same man who had led the 10,000 through the jaws of death now found himself without a country. But Xenophon was nothing if not adaptable. He took refuge in Sparta, serving under King Agesilaus and even fighting alongside the Spartan army. A student of Socrates, now standing in the ranks of warriors he once viewed as enemies, his life had come full circle. He embraced Spartan discipline, admired their way of life, and was rewarded with an estate in Sicily, where he would spend years in quiet reflection. There, surrounded by nature, he wrote. He put to paper the incredible odyssey of the 10,000, ensuring that their struggle, their pain, and their triumph would never be forgotten. His Anabasis was more than just a war memoir. It was a masterclass in leadership, a testament to human resilience, and a gripping adventure that would inspire generations. Centuries later, his words would shape the minds of military commanders, philosophers, and explorers. Alexander the Great carried Xenophon's Anabasis with him as he carved his empire across the known world, learning from the mistakes and triumphs of the 10,000. But Alexander was far from the only one. Throughout history, Xenophon's Anabasis became a manual of survival, strategy, and leadership. The Roman generals studied it, admiring the discipline of the Greek phalanx and the resilience of men stranded in hostile lands. Julius Caesar himself is said to have drawn inspiration from Xenophon's leadership, proof that even emperors saw value in the wisdom of a philosopher-turned-warrior. And then, centuries later, it resurfaced again. The French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte carried Xenophon's Anabasis as he marched across Europe, fascinated by the ability of the 10,000 to navigate foreign terrain, overcome logistical nightmares, and adapt to new threats. Even in the frigid Russian winter of 1812, when Napoleon's army found itself retreating through brutal conditions, some of his officers compared their suffering to that of Xenophon's men. The echoes of the Anabasis didn't stop there. In World War II, British officers in North Africa studied Xenophon's tactics to understand how a smaller, disciplined force could outmaneuver a larger enemy in harsh desert conditions. Even in modern warfare, military academies still teach Xenophon's account as a lesson in leadership under extreme pressure. But what makes this story truly timeless isn't just its impact on generals and emperors. It's the human element, the raw determination of men who refused to accept defeat. The 10,000 weren't legendary heroes of myth, blessed by the gods like Achilles or Hercules. They were real men, soldiers for hire, abandoned in the heart of an empire that wanted them dead. They had no divine intervention, no chosen one to lead them. They had only their wits, their discipline, and a man who had once been nothing more than a student of philosophy. And yet, against all odds, they survived. That's why Anabasis endures. It's not just a story of war. It's a story of resilience, of ordinary men forced into extraordinary circumstances, proving that even when the world turns against you, when survival seems impossible, there is always a way forward. And now you know the truth. The greatest march in history wasn't led by a king or an emperor. It was led by a man who never expected to lead. A man who became a legend.